You've had an interesting path from accountant at EY to working on
Yeah,
turnarounds, restructuring, and now a passionate impact investor, which, in my opinion, is doing some amazing things. Particularly, if I may humbly say, we've seen doctors and shop stewards and everyone else get a lot of credit through this COVID pandemic, but people such as yourself who are actively investing in startups for the future that people don't even know about today, you're looking 10, 20 years out, and you're touching on stuff that most people don't understand today. For me, you are doing the stuff that's going to help prevent disease, illness, and sustainability crises. And this is no pressure to you, but tell us more about who you are and how you got to this big why of yours.
yeah. So I most of my career has been spent as a private equity investor, and so I've been investing in private companies. I started as a generalist and looking at a lot of different industries, and then over time started to specialize in food and agriculture. And so I spent probably about 15 years of my career focused on food and agriculture. And as I learned more and more about that, I started moving more and more towards sustainability because I was just learning about the climate impacts of animal agriculture, learning about the environmental damage of different industries, and learning about food waste. And I just said, look, if I'm going to invest in this, I've got to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. And so that's where I started moving. And we founded, so I was at Advantage Capital for about 6 years, and we were investing. It was an impact firm, but it was really focused around getting jobs into rural America, which was interesting, but not the kind of impact I was really interested in, which was around sustainability. And so all my angel investments were going towards sustainability type investments. And some of the Advantage were, but most of those were around rural America. Right. And so I left in 2020, and I had co-founded with a friend of mine a company called Cool Beans. And
I love
there's
that.
now, yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, we were shocked that it was available, and so we wanted to bring one of the things. I went vegan 5 years ago back in 2017 for climate. But one of the things I learned as I did that, I started reading more and more about nutrition and about whole food, plant-based diet, the fiber, and all those different things. And was very frustrated that there wasn't more convenient food ready to eat in the grocery store that was whole food ingredients and, plant-based whole food ingredients. So that's really what we set out to do. Was we were probably one of the first. The good news is there's now 6 or 7 other companies doing it too, and so we're starting to see a trend toward. I've done a talk recently, twice actually, on clean label as the future of plant-based, and I really do believe that's the direction we're moving in. The first introductions were all really interesting. Plant-based simulations of existing products, but their labels didn't look great. And now what we're seeing is, hey, can't we do that really good tasting food in a way that is great both for people and the planet? And so that's really what we're seeing, that trend starting. And then I'll just add to that, because build on that. So there's 4 of us that are kind of work on Cool Beans, all kind of the co-founders. And so it's not a full-time gig for me. I'm also on the side an operating partner at a company called Beyond Impact. And Beyond Impact invests in companies that are taking animals out of the supply chain for food, fashion, beauty, and pet food. And so they're passionately involved in looking at interesting companies around the world, really, that are doing great things in that space.
Wonderful. I mean, there's, again, so much, but I'm going to pick up on some of what you mentioned around clean label. Thank you for introducing yourself, and I'll draw on a few more questions as we go. But my question just around your perception, or at least the definition of clean label. Could you just help us with that? Because there might be some people listening today who are new to this category or new to the area that might just be inquisitive and curious. What do we mean by clean label?
So there's really there's 2 elements to it from my perspective. One is lesser ingredients and recognizable names. So it's not chemicals, it's not chemical additives, preservatives, things like that. So it's without those, it's, you know, as close to the actual ingredient, original ingredients as possible. Yeah. And the second thing is around nutrition. So when I think of clean label, I think of things with low to no saturated fat, good amount of fiber, decent protein, and reasonable low sugar, as much as possible. So yeah, so that's really how I think of clean label, and maybe different than some other people, but yeah,
I love that, actually. And I think that's such a simple way of expressing it in ways that consumers and even industry experts and veterans can relate to. You know, speaking to Andre Menezes on Friday, and Andre is a co-founder in one of your businesses, specializing in creating plant-based food in the chicken, so replacing chicken. We met briefly at London Tech Week, not with Andre, but one of your investor partners. And in the conversation, that was actually driven heavily at London Tech Week by an investment speak. I kind of put my hand up and started asking slightly out of the ordinary questions around, well, what's the consumer value in this, particularly the nutrition? So as someone who's worked in the space for probably since 2016 now, a good few years. I joined a yoga studio in 2016. My partner, we're all surrounded by yogis, well-being in a very busy London practice. And this was a world that was new to me. So plant-based, nutritional, you know, fermented food, kimchi, kefir, etc. And as someone who's worked in the food and beverage industry for a good 25 years now, it was new. And someone who'd worked in healthy food marketing with big global corporations and trying to, you know, create brands and labels on shelf that was easy to understand. This was a new territory for me, and I needed to go deep again in order to at least wash away some of the confusing elements. And there's still some out there. And so what I love about what you do is the language you bring, the businesses you invest in, and also the mission, particularly around it's good for the environment, of course, but the environment also consists of humans, and humans need to also be taken care of in terms of nutritional components. So I think that's really a reinforcement of what I love about what you're doing, and also what was interesting to me about what you invest in. As someone who has, suffered, as I say, in 2016, I had some medical challenges around high acid in my body. This came from stress. It was in business. I was traveling too much, living the life that many of us would have been living in big cities around London, New York, etc. And I found myself in a yoga studio surrounded by other burnt out London doctors, lawyers, venture capitalists, sort of teachers who were burning out and were looking for interventions. And so this is where I found this category. So there's a bit of a context to that. Sorry, I'm doing all the talking, and I was intending on.
I think we have a lot of misconceptions about nutrition in this country, in the U.S. anyway, and I'm assuming that it's probably similar.
Same here.
Right.
Same.
Yeah, and when you think about I know there's a lot of these startups that are doing this personalized nutrition and doing body scans and all this. What's fascinating about that is, for the most part, I think it's nonsense. I believe that, look, if you eat a real diversity of plants, like they talk about in Fibre Fueled, you're going to get all the nutrients you need. You're going to get the vitamins, you're going to get the fiber, you're going to get the protein that you need. And to spend a lot of money on personalized nutrition is not necessary in my mind. Where I think one of the big problems we have in the US is that carbs have been so demonized. And carbs are not bad. Carbs are actually what your cells need to survive. That's what you actually live on. And the whole idea of starving your body of that, you'll lose weight, but it isn't going to feel good. And you're going to gain that weight right back because it's going to be so miserable that you're just going to want to eat everything when you get off of it. And you're starving your cells of actually replicating by going low or no carb.
Yeah.
So I definitely agree that the type of carbs are matter. So if you're eating highly processed, enriched wheat flour and lots of sugar and stuff like that, absolutely, that's not good for you. But beans and veggies and grains that have carbs are not bad. They're actually very good for you. Big source of fiber.
So, I mean, for me, this was a major unlock. Thanks to you. You introduced me to Dr. Will, correct me if I'm wrong, Bulsiewicz.
Bulsiewicz, yeah, yeah.
His book called Fiber Fueled, and it was a game changer. I mean, I've in the past read some amazing books, particularly in this space. One of which is The Body Keeps the Score. You probably know this one. This
Yeah.
by most experts and also trauma physicians in the industry. And then My Stroke of Insight, another great book.
That one, yeah.
By Joel Taylor. And these two, I mean, in the yoga studio, we were in a very busy practice in London. And we met a lot of people, but typically trying to escape from the autopilot humdrum of everyday life. So burnout, eating sometimes on the run, convenience, not sitting down, poor breathing practices, too much sitting on your phone. There is that email apnea. I think the book might have spoken about email apnea as well, which is interesting, but this is typically a term where people, when they're reading over email, don't continue their breathing, the normal breathing pattern. They actually hold. And this is something that's actually quite common amongst people. And we got a lot of people coming in with issues, not just around nutrition, but burnout and the ability to stay focused and concentrate. And these were sort of alphas in many instances in the industry, sort of gravitating towards roles in these big cities. But Dr. Will's book was interesting, and I'm going to draw on one of the two things that he mentioned here in order to ask you a couple of questions. But I really want to showcase and narrow the lens on this particular discovery that you've shared. Now, as someone who's been close to this, I've been involved in investing in a lot of these businesses: kimchi, kefir, kombucha startups, fermented food businesses, but also plant-based home delivery startups. Very few people focus on the fiber. We talk about the wonderful bacteria in the stomach and how many sort of trillions and billions of new bacteria we're discovering with every new bit of technology that we're unpiecing or coming up with in the lab. So in 2006, there was new technology that was brought onto the market in the laboratory, which helped us see beyond the 2,000 odd bacteria that we had known until then. And, we're now looking at about 30,000, according to the book, but Dr. Will is a better source for that information that you opened up. But for me, the interesting thing here was around the benefit of the fiber and the data, the number of the large amounts of data that is now behind this. I mean, what are your thoughts? Right. And how much, this is obviously not something that's in the mainstream yet. You're kind of ahead of the pack.
Yeah, no, I agree. And what's interesting is, people are so caught up in probiotics, prebiotics, postbiotics, and how do I get the balance? And just throw all that out. It doesn't matter. The whole thing is just eat 30 different plants a week that have different fiber. And that's really what matters, because those fiber all fuel different gut bacteria, and having healthy gut bacteria is what you're trying to get. And it's really much easier than you think. When I first read the book, I actually measured for a while. I had a little spreadsheet. I was trying to keep track, and I was easily averaging over 50. Just with a normal plant-based diet, I was easily averaging over 50 different plants a week. Wow. And I've talked to other people that get over 200, by eating just lots of different beans and different kinds of greens. And it sounds daunting, but it's actually much easier than you would think. So, I think that's really the key unlock that Dr. Will talks about, and makes it so simple. Now, I love fermented foods. I think they're great. And a pro tip, if you're ever starting to feel anything under the weather, like a cold or something coming on, eat a bunch of sauerkraut, for the next couple days, and it will go away a lot faster as a result. Again, it's fermented foods are good for your gut, and they're providing different kinds of fiber, et cetera. So, fascinating.
Yeah, and I mean, and again, I guess I'm a convert. I think this really, the reason why I wanted to speak to you today is to actually resurface this conversation. What's happened in the last year or so has been, we've got this binary issue in our culture. You know it in the US, we know it in the UK, we know it elsewhere in the world, where everything's either right or wrong. It's going to work or it won't work. And at the moment, I think we need to be providing more oxygen to people such as yourself and startup founders who are trying to make an impact. They're still in some cases, the Davids taking on Goliaths. And these Goliaths have been amortized over decades and have positions of strength and dominance, and in some cases created defensibility. I've worked with them, so I'm speaking from experience. I've been spending the last 2 decades helping some of these players grow, but ultimately the little guys now need to come up and create these new innovations. The impact players need to break through. And they need oxygen, and oxygen in the form of awareness just to cut through, but B, also funding, and beyond that, support. So support around how to grow a business, how to build your go-to-market, how to do the simple constructs of acquiring customers. And at the moment, that costs a lot of money. It costs, if you're a startup founder in London, people I've worked with, in London or Amsterdam, these are expensive cities. So before you can even start investing in your business, you've got to live there. And these, are cities in which the rents are the highest in the world. I've seen these founders really bleed over the since 2015, 16, really, just to break through and to survive in year one. So it's a daunting task. It's a wonderful ideal. It's not all Tesla and gravy out there. And I guess my question to you is, how do we fund, how do we support, how do people such as yourself connect with founders and perhaps consumers who have problems and who have marketing ideas that they want to bring to life?
It's a good question. And it's a daunting task to start, especially a CPG company. I think that the path to get into stores is difficult. DTC is a good path, but not open to everybody. If you have frozen or fresh products, it's harder. So it is a big issue. And the hardest part of it is early on trying to get the money. So people start, they usually get money from friends and family. And then when you get much bigger, there's venture capital money that's available, but there's a dead period in between where you kind of need that second pool of money. One of the great things that has come up, and we've actually used one right now, so it's kind of a shameless plug, but crowdfunding has become a huge avenue. And so we're actually running a campaign on Republic right now for Cool Beans. And so anybody can invest.
That, by the way, since I spoke.
Yeah, and anybody can invest for as little as $100. And so it's a great way if you like to encourage brands to exist and want them to succeed. It's a great way to get behind them and then hopefully have an investment that's going to be worth something someday as well. And Republic's not the only place. Ours is on Republic, but there's also Start Engine, there's WeFunder, there's a couple other ones, and there's a whole nother group in the UK. But Republic, we chose Republic because they have a fair amount of food companies on the website, and so we thought that the investors would know that better. But Start Engine does too, so both of those are good spots to find kind of CPG companies that are raising. And we didn't need to get money. We have kind of a group of angel investors, so we didn't really need the money, but we wanted to take $200,000 and put it on Republic because we wanted the evangelical investors that are going to spread the word about Cool Beans and tell their friends and whatnot. So that's who that's open for.
Love it.
Yeah.
And as an impact investor, what is it that you look for when you're investing in these businesses, these startups, in terms of founder, in terms of makeup, in terms of, your evaluation criteria, just, back of napkin type, sort of quick summary?
Yeah. And it's a little bit different for my personal investments versus beyond impact. So from a personal standpoint, I was very focused on sustainability, climate, and health. And so I'm invested as an angel very early in Simple Mills, and Simple Mills has become a big company now, but they were one of the leaders in clean label. And it's so funny because you think about that traditional square with all the ingredients, and there's a lot of things you don't recognize, and gums and blankety blank acid and whatever. when I first looked at Simple Mills package, I was kept turning around. I said, where the hell is the ingredients label? And she said, oh, it's these 7 ingredients lined vertically on the side. And it was like a mind blower that, oh, there's only 7 ingredients and they listed them vertically. So it just made people think differently about ingredients. And now more people do that. But yeah, so clean ingredient was very important to me. And then sustainability, everything I did was plant-based focused. And then I'm very focused on upcycling. So I've got 2 investments in upcycling food to reduce food waste. One of those is Renewable Mill in Oakland, which takes the leftover waste from making tofu, soy milk, and oat milk, and creates delicious, nutritious flours that then they create baking mixes like brownie mix or cookie mix, etc. And the other is Atomo coffee, which we talked about briefly. And they upcycle, they basically create coffee without any coffee beans at all. And they start with a Medjool date pit and then ferment it with a bunch of other upcycled ingredients to create the look, feel, and taste of coffee, but no coffee's involved. So really fascinating company. Yeah, and then on the Beyond Impact side, we're a little bit more science focused, so a little more patent oriented. So we're invested there in a company called Nowadays Nuggets, which is pea protein based chicken nuggets with unbelievably clean label, only 7 ingredients, 0 saturated fat, 5 grams of fiber, and 13 grams of protein in 5 chicken nuggets that only have 120 calories. Wow. So, I mean, you eat 10 chicken nuggets, it's 240 calories. That's very different than the garbage you would eat if you ate real chicken nuggets. So, and the amount of fat that you would have, et cetera. And then we're invested in Geltor, which is a company that makes plant-based collagen. And that is, they started with the beauty market, so for eye creams and face creams and whatnot. And now they're moving into the nutrition market for the stuff that would go into like a vital proteins when people want collagen for beauty and rejuvenation and whatnot. But without I don't know if you know how real collagen is made, but it's gross. It's, it's like the hooves and the bones and just the waste from animals. It's pretty disgusting stuff. And so this is a plant-based alternative that's fermented, basically. And then we're investing in a lot of other companies. In your area, a company called Mighty, which is pea protein-based milk, dairy products.
Discovered some of that for the first time in Amsterdam a week ago.
It's a little bit cleaner label than some of the other things that are out there. And yeah, it's what's nice about peas too in general is they're a real fighter of climate because they all legumes, which are beans and peas and pulses, etc., they sequester carbon. So they pull carbon out of the air and sequester it into soil, which is great for the other plants because the other plants need nitrogen to grow. And so then they can pull from that to grow. So that's why you often hear legumes, whether it be soybeans or peas, are in rotated crops because you need to put that back in the soil.
That's fascinating. Yeah. So in a sense, it's right. The beans are almost to the planet what cucumber and celery is to the human body. It kind of neutralizes and cleanses.
Yeah, and there are other plants like that too. Again, that's why when you hear about people talking about regenerative agriculture, I'm always curious. I'm a huge supporter of regenerative, but all that really means is you're planting a wide diversity of crops. Instead of just monocropping one corn, you're planting 15 different crops. Your field looks like shit. It doesn't look nice and neat and everything, but you're going to make more money, and each one of those is putting something else in the soil for the other plants to grow. Like buckwheat is very good to put, I think it's potassium in the soil that other plants need. So again, that's really the importance of that diversity of plants, both for soil diversity and now we know for health too in your gut.
Love it. And in terms of so Atomo is an interesting example of some of these regenerative practices. I mean, you made the investment around 2017, is that right? 18, somewhere there in Atomo?
Correct.
That's today still fairly out there, sitting, talking about this in 2023. So, I want to ask you the question: what are you looking at today that we're not even talking about yet?
Yeah, yeah, that's a good question. So one of the things we're invested in, we don't do a lot of pre-revenue at Beyond Impact. In the first fund they did, this is their second fund and that I'm involved with. We like to see some proof of concept, but we are in a few, and cell-based meat is one of those. So we're invested in a company called Super Meat out of Israel, and they make cell-based, starting with chicken. And they actually serve it right now in Israel, but because it's not FDA approved and it's not approved by the authority in Israel, you basically have to sign a waiver. So they have a cafe, and people can go in and eat the cell-based meat, chicken, but you have to just sign a waiver that you understand it's not yet approved. It's supposedly close to getting approved, maybe hopefully early next year in the US. And so that'll probably be their first market coming to the US. Now, a true plant-based eater might not want to eat that because, again, while it takes the animal out of the picture, it does have, it is still chicken, which isn't necessarily great for you. It's going to have cholesterol, and so you gotta weigh those benefits, but it will take the animals out of the supply chain on that.
Very interesting.
Yeah, so that's certainly one area we're looking at. We're very interested in fermented mycelium and fermented algae, which are going to be big areas coming up. There's several big companies that have raised quite a bit of money, and we're looking at some. We're pretty disciplined on valuation, and some of those valuations are out of control right now, so we haven't done that. Pet food certainly an area that's coming. And then what's really interesting right now that we're looking at is clothing and materials and apparel. So yeah, you're seeing leather made from mushrooms, leather made from other waste products, the banana peels and different things. So I think you'll see more of that in the future that are workable and lasting and have a better sustainable footprint than the animal-based. Yeah, and the issue with the animals is, I mean, certainly there's the compassion standpoint, but we have billions and billions and billions of animals that far exceed. It's something like 7 to 10 times as many animals there on the planet than humans, and they're almost all in about 6 species. It's cows, it's pigs, etc. Because we're basically using them to feed, and 60% of the farmland in the U.S. is used to grow food for animals. It's staggering to think about all that land that has, the trees have been cut down and we're growing stuff now, but to feed animals. So it's a very inefficient system.
Fascinating. And I'd said to you that we're going to run out of time. We're going to have to do this again. I'm
sure. Happy to.
This is such a cool subject. I mean, we could do this on a weekly basis, but I've got 2 more I want to try and squeeze in, if I may.
Yeah.
So as someone who works in the space of purpose and really getting behind some very exciting stuff, things that can really make a difference, do you find that what you do, and this is maybe a tricky question, but do you find what you do attracts people who have purpose? It attracts people who want but might not have purpose, or people who are looking to inspire and create purpose? What do you think?
Yeah, I definitely do. I think the industry is attracting a lot of people. What you find is that, especially the younger generation, Gen Z, is very interested in working on companies where they feel good about what they're doing every day. And so certainly everybody has the same career drive that previous generations did, but now you couple into that, I really want to feel good about what I'm doing. And it shows in what they, everything that they do, Generation Z in particular, has a climate impact calculated in. And that's not 100% of that population, but much higher percentage than others. I would say maybe 60, 70%.
Yeah.
Think about climate and everything they buy. So they thrift a lot more because they don't want to buy new clothes. They eat vegan. They're identifying as vegan at the 20% rate for
Wow.
18 to 25-year-olds, which is fascinating. So they're just very aligned to that. And so it flows into their career as well. So you definitely see a lot of younger people that want to get into the industry and reach out to ask, how do I do it?
Speaking to someone a week ago who is he's a global expert on workplace cultures and some of the problems we're seeing in the workplace today around adaptive leadership and how do we get people to come back into the workplace for one. His views, and which I'll share again, it's on the podcast, but his views were very interesting in that he was saying that it's not just the younger generation, but across all geodemographics, but people have lost meaning in the workplace, particularly the meaning around what is it I do, how do I have impact and the social value that I create, and that this is becoming increasingly a question that everyone's asking, not just the Gen Zs. So it was really interesting to hear that, and of course we're getting the evangelists coming from the younger generations, but there's a lack of meaning and purpose, I think, across the board, and certainly the audience that will be listening to this are people that are in positions that are wanting to hear this, and not only hear that, but how do we fix that? And I think listening to what you're doing, looking at what you're doing, and investing in that. You mentioned fast fashion. There's so much happening right now, and these aren't the first early adopters. These are really the players that are now mimicking what the early adopters came in and did 5 years ago or 3 years ago. So it's an interesting opportunity to have a lens into what we need to be doing in the future, not just in what we're eating and how we're creating supply chains, but also how we're creating meaningful work for people to wake up and really jump out of bed and want to be a part of. So I salute you.
I think you're much happier when you really care about what you're doing, for sure.
Wow. My last question to you, and thank you so much, and I'm loving this, but my last question to you is, how do you've mentioned some of your own diet and you've embraced, did you say veganism or vegetarianism?
I'm vegan. Yeah, I've been vegan for about 5 years now. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, tell us more. What else do you do? What are your kind of watch outs? What's important? Obviously, everyone's body is different, but out of interest, what are the disciplines and new habits that you've adopted as a result of this insight?
Yeah, that's a good question. When I went into this, I wasn't somebody that cooked. I rarely cooked. I knew how to make mac and cheese, but that's about it. And now I cook 3 or 4 times a week. So I've learned, and I just use different apps like Food Monster and found recipes and made curries or pastas or whatever. And it's been great. And I now make a vegan pizza every week that has no cheese on it. So it's just veggies and like a red sauce with pesto in it. And I make that once a week because my family all screams for it and none of them are vegan. So it's been fun to evolve and learn how to cook. I, like anybody else, have weaknesses, though. I would say that late at night and sugar is still one of those things that I have to work on and try to improve. Yeah. But my first 3 meals of the day are really good, and then I usually break down for a little bit and try to cut down and do a little better on that. But that's what it is. It's so.
As an accountant, you'd appreciate it's all about debits and credits, right?
It is. That's right. Exactly. Yeah. As long as you do it in moderation, I think it's probably okay. Yeah.
I think so. Well, I mean, Tyler, it's been enormously, insightful. Thank you so much. Not just today, but just being around you is cool. It's cool. It's cool being
appreciate that. Yeah, no, I appreciate you having me on, and I really, I'm happy to come back and talk deep do a deep dive in one or two of the categories for sure.
Definitely. Well, we've got your name all over that. Thank you so much. And yeah, I mean, if there's anything, if people want to find out more about you, how do they find you? Where do they, do we have social handles?
I'm on Twitter, LinkedIn, and TikTok and Instagram, all with my regular name, Tyler Mayoras. So that's you can find me in any of those places. Cool Beans is ecoolbeans.com. As I mentioned, we're on Republic right now, also called eCool Beans. Just do a search on Republic. You can find our investment opportunity. Beyond Impact is beyondimpact.vc. And if you're a founder that's looking for capital, just submit to us on that platform on the website there, or email me. And my email's tyler@beyondimpact.vc or tyler@ecoolbeans.com. Either one.
So much gratitude, and have a great rest of day. You've got the start to your day. So
Good week. Yeah, that's right.
Have a wonderful week.
Really nice to chat. Thanks,
Thank
Andrew.
you,